Ladies probably, okay, actually, a couple of you have asked me already, why get a guy speaker? It's a woman's day event. But then I realized that, as ladies, it is great to hear what our fellow moms, our fellow sisters have to say about us as women. But it's also important that we do get the perspective of the opposite sex, because we do live with the male species, unfortunately. Unfortunately. So it adds a twist to the whole talk show feel that we don't only get one view, but we get it from both sides. Yeah, both angles. I think we play in society. What can we say about the role that women play in society?
I think that's a good question. Being in the lioness's den, I have to be careful what I say. I think women play various roles. Your traditional roles, such as being a mom, caretaker, keeping the house together. Those are traditional roles women have always played, and I think will continue to play. But it's a role that can be, in the world we live in, where women are now required or want to work more and have other roles, need the support of brothers, dads, husbands, boyfriends, etc. So you have your traditional roles. You also have roles in business, roles in government, roles in community. And I think I'd like to spend a few minutes around roles in communities, because the speakers before me mentioned collaboration. We live in a world where our education system, people around us advocate competition. And the unintended consequence of competition is we start trampling on others to get ahead. So it's not about how many have I taken with me to the top. I need to get to the top at any cost. Now, a lot of us, this has been conditioned. This is the way life is. So we don't see it as being wrong. I'm included. And for me, it's about competing is important, because unfortunately we live in a competitive world, so we have to embrace that. But how many can we take to the top with us? So I think that's a role certainly women can play, men included. But that's something I think, and the further we get into the 21st century, that's something that women can certainly assist with.
I like the fact that you don't think that women belong in the kitchen, because that's why I asked that question. Because sometimes we find that as much as we women do press on and we do try and achieve things for ourselves, there's still that whole thing that, especially that pressure to get married, settle down, and then that's it. People forget that we also have dreams and goals that we also want to achieve. Like and become like Mom Thorns, and do something for yourself. So that's why I asked that question, because sometimes I feel that, especially the male species, they feel that.
Shame. The little devil that sits on my right shoulder knew I should have said no to the invitation. And now I see I'm being set up as God. I think feminism has a place, but it definitely has a place. But I think, again, like the speakers before me, it sometimes can be used for the wrong reasons. So feminism is great when it's practiced in the sense that women should be free, and every single opportunity out there should be shared equally between men and women. Save for, I think, actually bringing a child to the world. I think that's now playing with genetics and other. But, humor aside, I think feminism advocates exactly that. But feminism is not about women being better than men, or better than themselves for that matter. If a lady chooses to stay home and bring up her kids, that's her right. A democratic right, a right as a human being, a right as a mother. If somebody chooses to put work ahead of family, that's also their choice. So I think in the same manner, we should express compassion when it comes to sexuality. We have to also express compassion when it comes to women choosing how they'd like to embrace and express feminism. So I think feminism has made huge strides over the last, I think we only have to look at 20 to 50 years. And it should continue, but it should continue for the right reasons. And that reason is really equality in terms of opportunity. Be it business, be it being a family member, be it a politician, an activist, the list goes on, but it's all about equality.
awesome stuff. We're pitching quite for ourselves, or pitching month for ourselves. But do you really think that celebrating Women's Day does achieve something, or what are your views?
I'm so glad I had two female speakers before me, so at least if I choose to be contentious, I'm levering off my previous speakers. And I think celebration is important as well. But we have to ask ourselves, what are we celebrating and why are we celebrating? So if we go from 1 year to the next, or 1 decade to the next, and nothing has changed, well then it's just a pretty excuse for a celebration. But if we're actually advancing and going forward, then there's nothing wrong with celebrating. We celebrate birthdays, we celebrate doing well in exams, we celebrate Christmas, Eid, Diwali, there are a lot of things we celebrate. So I think we need to have a reason to celebrate. So I'm not on the extreme side that we shouldn't celebrate at all, but I think a celebration its own can be futile. So yes, we have a Women's Day, which is a public holiday in this country, and we have various functions around the country which advocates women's rights, feminism, etc. A lot of talk happens, a lot of speech happens, a lot of activities around celebration happens. What happens the very next day and the next 364 days before the next Women's Day? So I think if we're celebrating milestones that we've achieved, sure, let's have a party. If we're just celebrating because it's something in the calendar and it's achieving nothing greater, then we need to ask ourselves what and why are we celebrating?
So coming back to women in business, as we were speaking about, so you're a businessman, and you probably deal with women that are also in business. Do you feel that there is a role that we are playing in the sense that we're not just there in terms of just to, because sometimes you find that some companies will just employ so that they can get the portions, the ratios according to what government stipulates, but then you find that the women are just there to decorate. As a man in business, do you think that women are fulfilling roles in business, as in making an impact and a change?
I think definitely. I think there'll always be a case of companies hiring to make their numbers look better, and I think there'll always be somebody willing to fill those shoes. But that aside, women definitely play a very important role in business. And I think for me, where they can sometimes go wrong is where they lose authenticity. So yes, some industries are male dominated, but all of you here are females for a reason. Don't try to be a male in a male dominated space, because then what happens is, on various levels, the communication falls apart. Because I think we're all programmed to communicate with our own sex or the other sex in a certain way. And now when you start communicating with a female and you get male responses, you get male ego coming from a female, it almost confuses the brain, it contorts the brain. And what happens is you actually have a complete breakdown. You know, if I look at my days at Investec, I had about 4 managers who were female. And the ones that were the best managers were authentic. They remained true to the fact that they are female and woman. They were not trying to be like males. And the ones that I could never get along with and just, it was dysfunctional really, were the ones who thought they need to become men and act like men. And I think that's, and I can understand to a point why that happens, particularly in the construction industry where, you know, if you have male-dominated, it's a male-dominated space. One might think, well, the only way I'll ever be taken seriously as a woman is if I act like a male. And I think that's the biggest injustice you can do to yourself. So it's not just in business, it's as a student, it's as a daughter, it's as a sportswoman, it's in any field. Be authentic. You have your unique skills, you have your gender, use it to your advantage. I'm not saying in an unethical way. I'm not saying... I'm not saying get ahead at any expense, but you can be true to yourself and you can be authentic.
Mitan, as we have said that you are also a senior lecturer at WITS, so you do interact with a lot of young people and young females. Where do you see that? Where do we go wrong? In the sense, for example, you see how we maybe interact in class lectures compared to the males. You know, where do we go wrong? Like, would you advise us to maybe pick up from a lecturer's perspective? Because most of us are students, yeah. What advice would you give us on that level?
I think, and I was paying attention to the previous speakers as well, and I actually have experienced the opposite. I have found females to be more hardworking than males.
That's
I've come from the banking industry, and some of you might be aware of the community lending schemes that exist in Limpopo or exist down in Eastern Cape. They've come from Bangladesh, from the Grameen Bank model. And these models only lend to women because statistically women are found to be the hardest working gender. So if women have £5 extra, there's a statistical chance, there's a better chance that they'll actually spend that money on upkeeping their home or on their family. Whereas men will more likely spend it on cigarettes or alcohol. Now statistically, I'm talking averages here, I'm not talking about every particular case. And even in my interactions as a lecturer, I find that females tend to consult more, they tend to ask more questions in lectures, they tend to do their tutorials, do their, for lack of a better word, homework. But my experience has been quite different, and I'd like to say continue that, because I think there's no shortcut to hard work. We are, all of us, me included, we are from a generation who wants instant gratification. But I think when it comes to business, when it comes to making money, when it comes to bringing up kids, there is no instant gratification. Once you have money, sure, you can buy a nice house, a nice car, and get the gratification from that immediately. But to build up all of that first, there are no shortcuts. And if you do come up with shortcuts, please ask yourself if this is the genuine deal. Because often opportunities can be sugar-coated, and they'll seem like you've solved the world. And after 6 months, after a year, after 5 years sometimes, you realize that, hang on, I've actually been short-sold here. And it could be anything from a relationship. A guy could present himself as something more than he is. It could be an opportunity in the workplace. You touched on sometimes companies hire just so their numbers look better. Be careful, look after that. Be cautious. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people are all looking to take shortcuts and exploit others. So sometimes, no matter how good something seems, it may not be.